Hello and welcome to the lesson on Potter's five force analysis. In this video, we will explain the model and learn how a business can systematically diagnose the competitive forces in the market and assesses the strengths and importance of each of these forces. Potter's five forces are a method for analyzing the competitive forces that are shaping the marketplace. The character, mix and intricacies of each of these competitive forces differ from one industry to another. And the model is especially useful when someone wants to enter into a new business or a new market. It helps to understand the nature of competition in the market and the level of profitability of a market. This model is also known as the model to understand industry's attractiveness. Before we discuss the model, we need to understand the context. Broadly speaking, there are three kinds of environmental factors that every business faces. First are the macro level factors. These factors refers to the broader or the general factors that can affect a business. Example of these factors include demographic, political, economic, socio-cultural and technological factors. Business has no control over these factors. The second are the micro level factors. These factors are the factors that determine the internal operating environment of the business, and it has complete control over these factors. So for example, if the company wants to change its recruitment policy or training methods of its employees, it can do so easily. Meso-level factors are those external factors that directly impact the business. They are between the micro and macro level factors. Business can influence these factors but do not have control over them. Potter's five force analysis help to understand that how business can shape these meso-level factors in their favor so that it can improve its profitability and overall performance. According to Potter's five forces, higher the competitive forces in an industry, lower is the industry's profit as a whole, and so less attractive the industry will be. And conversely, the lower the competitive forces, the higher will be the industry's profit, and so higher will be the attractiveness of that industry. It is important to understand that these factors are dynamic in nature, and over time the strength of each of these forces keeps on changing. So for example, it is possible that it is difficult to enter the market today because of high entry barriers, but over 5 to 10 years from now, it may be easy to enter the market. By applying Potter's five forces model of industry attractiveness to their own business, management can examine their strengths, weaknesses, probable threats, and future opportunities. So, now let's take a look into five forces. The first force is the threat of new entrants. New entrants can reduce an industry's profitability because they add new production capacity, leading to an increase in the supply of product. And sometimes they supply these products at a lower price, which can substantially erode the existing firm's market share position. New entrants can be a powerful source of competition. The new capacity and product range that they bring in throws up a new competitive pressure. The bigger the new entrant, the more severe the competitive effect. New entrants also place a limit on prices and thus affect the profitability of the existing players. So for example, Reliance Jio offered cheap telecom services when it entered the telecom industry and limits the price of the existing players like Airtel, Vodafone or Idea. A firm's profitability tends to be higher when new firms are blocked from entering the industry. To discourage new entrants, the existing firms can try to raise barriers to entry. Barriers to entry actually represents economic forces or hurdles that slow down or impede the entry of new firms. The common barriers to entry include, firstly, the capital requirements. When a large amount of capital is required to enter an industry, firms lacking funds are effectively barred from that industry, thus enhancing the profitability of the existing players. Another barrier is the economies of scale, which refers to the decline in the per unit cost of production or other activity as the volume grows. The large firms enjoy economies of scale that can produce high volumes of goods at successively lower cost. This tends to discourage new entrants who are in the expansion stage and have a very high costs. Product differentiation is another barrier which refers to the physical or perceptual differences or enhancements that make a product special or unique in the eyes of customers. Differentiation works to reinforce entry barriers because the cost of creating genuine product differences may be too high for the new entrants. Switching costs also pose an important barrier for the new entrants. To succeed in an industry, new entrant must be able to persuade the existing customers of other companies to switch to their products. To make a switch, buyers may need to test a new firm's product, negotiate new purchase contracts, and train personnel to use equipments or modify their facilities for the new product use. Buyers often incur substantial financial and psychological costs in switching between firms. When such switching costs are high, buyers are often reluctant to change. Brand identity of products or services offered by the existing firms can serve as another entry barrier. Brand identity is an important factor, especially for the infrequently purchased products. So the new entrants often encounter significant difficulties in building up the brand identity and have to spend huge resources for the same. Access to distribution channels pose significant entry barrier for the new entrants. Often, the existing firms have significant influence over the distribution channels and can retard or restrict their use by the new firms. The possibility of aggressive retaliation by the existing player is also a major threat for the new firms. The existing firms retaliate the entry of new by increasing the advertising budget or reducing their prices. Bargaining power of the buyers is another force that influences the competitive condition of an industry. This force becomes heavier depending on the possibility of buyers forming the groups or cartels. Mostly, this is a phenomenon which is seen in the industrial products. The bargaining power of the buyers influences not only the prices that the producer can charge, but it also influences costs and investments of the producer. This is because powerful buyers usually bargain for better services which involve more investment on the part of the producers. The buyer's bargaining power is particularly high when, firstly, the buyers have full knowledge of the sources of the products and their substitutes. Thus, it can challenge the price being charged by the producers. And secondly, buyers spend a lot of money on the industry's product. That is, they are big buyers, thus in a position to demand favorable terms of contracts. The industry's product is not perceived as critical to the buyer's need, and buyers are more concentrated than the firm supplying these products. Then the buyer's power will be very high. They can easily switch to the substitutes available. Competitive force is the bargaining power of the suppliers. Very often, suppliers also exercise considerable bargaining power over the buyers. If the product or services offered by the suppliers are unique or specialized, then they will have greater clout. Similarly, if there are limited number of suppliers, then also they have greater bargaining power. The bargaining power of the suppliers determines the cost of the new materials and other inputs of the industry, and therefore an industry's attractiveness and profitability. Suppliers can also influence the profitability of an industry in a number of ways. Supplier can command a very high bargaining power over a firm when their products are crucial to the buyers and substitutes are not available. Or they can ensure high switching costs. Or suppliers are more concentrated than their buyers, which means less suppliers and more buyers. Threats of substitutes is another important source that affect the industry's attractiveness. The substitutes offer the same or nearby same functionalities of the given product. Substitute products are the important source of competition in an industry. They offer a price advantage or performance improvement to the customers and determine the competitive character of an industry. Substitutes too usually limit the prices and profits of an industry. The threat of substitutes is very high in case of tech-based industries. So for example, the launch of the smartphones have replaced the cameras to a great extent. According to Potter, competition amongst the existing firms in the industry is the final force that influences the strategic decision of every business. Functional decisions are more affected by the degree of competition in the industry. So for example, the price of the product, its advertising decisions are important decisions that are affected by the competitor's decision. The intensity of rivalry in an industry is the significant determinant of an industry's attractiveness and its profitability. The intensity of rivalry can influence the costs of suppliers, distribution, and that of attracting customers, and thus can directly affect the profitability. The more the intensive rivalry, the less attractive is the industry. There will be an intensive competition amongst the existing players in the market in cases like where there are large number of competitors in the industry and when there is a high fixed cost in the industry, and so fierce business tactics have to be adopted for the better return on investment. Under the high cost conditions, firms are motivated to utilize their capacity and so drop the prices under excess conditions. Price cutting causes profitability to fall for all firms in the industry. The presence of high exit barriers, and so there is a continuous fight for the market share. Rivalry amongst competitors declines. If competitors leave the industry, profitability therefore tends to be higher in the industries with few exit barriers. If an organization cannot exit, it would fight for its survival and thus intensify the competition. Product differentiation is another factor that determines the competition amongst the existing players. The firms can sometimes insulate themselves from the price wars by differentiating their products from those of its rivals. As a consequence, profitability tends to be higher in industries that offer opportunities for differentiation. Profitability, however, tends to be lower in industries involving undifferentiated commodities. The growth in the industry also affect the rivalry. Industries whose growth is declining tend to face more intensive rivalry. It is because as an industry's growth declines, the rivals would often fight harder to grow or sustain their existing market share. Thus, the forces, as discussed, determine an industry's attractiveness or its profitability. The collective strength of these five competitive forces determines the scope to earn attractive profits. It is summarized in this table. As you can see that high profit industries will have few rivals, face low threat of new entrants, will have weak buyers, products will be difficult to substitute and weak suppliers. Low profit industries, on the other hand, will have opposite features of large number of rivals, will face high threats of new entrants, powerful buyers, products will be easy to substitute and powerful suppliers. It is to be emphasized that the firms should be aware of the persistent forces impacting the profitability and not the temporary forces that may make industry to look more attractive or less attractive. So for instance, the high growth witnessed in the industry at present may not persist for a long run. Let's discuss a case for the better understanding of the Potter's model. K Limited is specialized in the production of washing machines. The company is operating in the market with three other companies. Each company manufactures similar type of product and sells similar volumes of washing machines each year. K Limited and its rivals own various patents relating to the production of washing machines. K Limited buys its raw materials through a number of small suppliers similar to its rivals. Now the question is, which of the following competitive forces from the Potter's model would be classified as high? The alternatives are: first, bargaining power of suppliers; second, competitive rivalry; third, threats of new entrants; and fourth is the threats of substitutes. Now let's examine each of the alternatives given. The first is bargaining power of the suppliers. Now in this case, K Limited buys raw materials from a large number of small suppliers, so their bargaining power will be very low. The second alternative is competitive rivalry. Now in this case, the company is operating in the industry where few firms exist and all are selling the similar products, and its volume is also same. So the competitive rivalry will be very high. The third alternative is threat of new entrants. It is clear from the case that all companies in the industry are holding large number of patents, so the entry barriers exist. Thus, the threat of new entrant is also low. The fourth alternative is the threats of substitutes. In this case, it is silent on this issue, so the strength of this force is unknown. There are some advantages and limitations of the model. As for the advantages, the model is easy to use and is helpful to assess the attractiveness of the industry, and firm can decide to enter the market or not enter the market. Business firms can also decide the effective strategy to defend themselves against these forces or position themselves so it can shape these forces in their favor. The model suffers from certain limitations, like the model analyzes these forces at a particular period of time, but in reality industry is constantly changing with new entrants or availability of substitutes over time. The new model alone cannot determine an effective strategy, since other factors such as internal organizational strengths and weaknesses are important for the formulation of the strategy. So, in summary, the Potter's model helps to understand the attractiveness of an industry at a particular point in time. By examining the fundamental forces such as threats of new entrants, threat of substitutes, bargaining power of the suppliers, buyers, and competition amongst the existing firms, business can know its profitability of the industry as a whole. The model states that higher the competitive forces, the lower will be industry's profit potential, and vice versa. As discussed, Potter's framework also provide an important inputs to reshape these forces in their favor. So that's it for this lecture. Thank you.